Okay, this is the PowerPoint that supports the lesson based on types of business ownership. So the objectives were to understand 4 types of business ownership, and within that, most of us were going to be able to explain the key concept of unlimited liability. Okay, so moving on. The first one we're looking at is sole trader. So as the name suggests, this is one person who is just the owner. That one person may employ other people, but that one person is the owner, and generally runs and manages the business. Okay. Commonly, these might be tradespeople, carpenters, and plumbers, and such like. Um, and part of being a sole trader is they need to raise the finance themselves. So they may have their own money, they might go to a bank for a loan, they might go to the family, or there might be loans from other financial institutions. One thing they cannot do is sell shares as a sole trader. Okay. Now they have this key concept of unlimited liability, and this basically means that when they start up a business and they obviously buy things that they need for their business, they incur the costs. Now, if it means that they have got to take out a loan to take those costs on, that loan is in that person's name. So therefore, if the company goes bankrupt and those loans are still outstanding, they still have to be paid back, that money has to come from the owner. Okay, so what that basically means in the legal sense is that those people who are owed the money are legally entitled to take anything of the same value off the person's personal possessions. So that can mean their house goes, that can mean their car goes, that can mean that their valuables, their jewellery, their stereos, whatever it might be, can be taken off them to meet that debt. Now, in the eyes of the law, it says that anything can be taken off the person except for the tools of their trade, so they can always start again, and one set of clothes. So, unlimited liability. If you are a business startup which has unlimited liability, this is a risky situation. Okay. So therefore, a common example of sole trader might be the dairy over the road. Uh, So, moving on, partnership. So, a partnership, as the name describes, this is more than one person. In fact, legally, it says anything from 2 to 25 partners. Okay, so uh, these guys will be sharing the profit. Obviously, the positive thing about the sole trader is he or she gets all the profit. And because it's a partnership, there's shared duties. So, therefore, in theory, they can take on more work. But they also have to discuss with each other in terms of taking decisions. Commonly, professional businesses, law firms, doctors' practices, dentist practices, solicitors, architects, very often they are set up as a partnership. Finance comes from the partners, a little bit like sole trader. They've got to produce their own money. Maybe a little bit easier to raise the finance because there's more people who can bring the money to the firm. But again, there's no sale of shares is not permitted. Once again, they run the risk of having unlimited liability, but maybe this time 2 people are sharing that burden of responsibility. So maybe it's not quite as risky as a sole trader. Um, in terms of setting up your own businesses, which you will be doing, this type of ownership is a common one which you will do. You'll have equal share, and you'll be seen as a partnership. Partners have an agreement which sets out the amount each partner has invested, and also how the partnership will run, how much profit they will receive, and who's going to be responsible for what. So all these are the sort of things that are going to be that you'll have to do in your businesses if you set up as a partnership. Now, a company, okay, now this has more than one owner, but these guys can issue shares for finance, okay, so therefore they're dividing up the ownership of the company, um, and in that, should the company make any profit, that profit goes back to those owners that have a part share, and this profit is referred to as a dividend. Very good technical term. These guys can also take out loans as well, so they've got an extra source of finance that they can choose to use should they want to. So companies, they're usually the bigger businesses. The businesses which are bigger, they have a big reputation, they've invested more money, more employees, etc., etc. So if you think about things like Xero, the warehouse, Apple, these will be referred to as companies. Okay, you could also set up this type of ownership for your businesses. Maybe you issue shares, and you might sell your shares to friends or family. etc., etc. Now, these guys have what we refer to as limited liability. So, if this company, in this format, goes bankrupt for whatever reason, all that's lost is the amount of money which has been initially invested in buying the share. They're not responsible for any further debts. Therefore, in this instance, the whole idea of the company and those people who own the company are separate entities. Okay, so a state-owned enterprise is a business owned by the government. It may have been a government department, and it's either corporatized, so it's made to run like a business, or potentially sold off to private buyers. This is known as privatization. So therefore, these are expected to be efficient, to keep costs down and not waste resources, and hopefully turn in a profit. However, it's not always the most important thing, because it being government-backed means that profits aren't always the most important thing, because the government can always seek more money from the taxpayers. Current examples in New Zealand: Kiwibank, Kiwirail, Air New Zealand, New Zealand Post, power companies. Very often, companies which have the name Kiwi or New Zealand in tends to give an indication that they are state-owned enterprises, or even were formerly state-owned enterprises. So any profits from the company go to the government to use for government spending, and they don't need to make as much profit as they could. But however, it's very much they offer a subsidised service, so therefore those services can run at a price which consumers can afford.